What's up, everybody? Hello and welcome to Not Your Average Meta, an MTG Commander channel dedicated to bringing you decks and commanders you wouldn't normally find in your average meta. This week's episode of Not Your Average Meta features a 4-man pot of all your favorite players back again in a new seeding arrangement with 4 new decks. First, we have Alex playing his mono black Crick Son of Yawgmoth deck. This deck is a tribal deck that looks to use Crick's mana replacement ability to dump out big scary demons at the cost of his own life. Next, we have Justin getting crazy this week and adding green to his color mix so he can play the Mimeoplasm. This deck looks to mill everybody at the table in order for Mimeo to have the best possible targets to choose from when he enters the battlefield. Then we have Robert playing the new Modern Horizons 2 5-color commander Garth One-Eye. This deck looks to give the fans what they want and make all the Black Lotus and Shivan Dragons the viewers can handle. Lastly this week we have Foggrowl playing his Anax and Cymede deck. This deck is a Boros Enchantron deck. At its core, it's a Voltron deck, but instead of using equipment, he uses enchantment auras in order to take advantage of not only the built-in enchantment synergies, but also to trigger his commander's heroic ability. Now we have the fighters, so let's step into the Thunderdome and see which deck comes out on top. Justin draws and plays a Swamp for turn. Robert draws and plays a Tap Temple Garden, then passes. Fog draws and plays a basic Plains. Foil draws, plays his own Swamp, and then passes back to Justin. Justin draws and plays a Command Tower before tapping 2 and casting 3 visits, going into his library to find a basic forest while he passes. Robert draws, plays an island, and then casts a Felwar Stone. Fog draws, plays another Plains, then casts a Core Spirit Dancer, and passes. Foil draws, then plays my favorite land in all of Magic, Gaia Reach Sanitarium. Justin casts a Territorial Scythe Cat. Robert draws, then plays Yawgmoth, Cradle of Growth, and then taps forward to cast an Archivist. Fog tapping 3 to cast his commander Anax and Cymede. Foil plays a Swamp for turn and then taps 1 to cast a Sanitarium Skeleton for the flavor win of the day. Justin draws and plays an island, putting a counter on his Scythe Cat. He then taps to cast Liliana, Walker of the Dead. Robert draws, then taps 3 to cast a Faber Elder. He then taps his Archivist to draw a card and top decks a land, playing Katria Triumph as his land for turn. Fog draws, then casts Escape Velocity, targeting Anax and Cymede, triggering Heroic, and plays a Plains for turn, before targeting Anax and Cymede with Beaming Defiance, triggering Heroic, and then casting Karametra's Blessing, triggering Heroic once again. He then swings at Justin, who blocks with the Scythe Cat, but still takes 9 commander damage from Trample. He then passes. Foil draws for turn, plays a Swamp, then taps 4 Swamps, and pays 6 life to cast his commander Crick, Son of Yawgmoth. Justin draws, plays another forest, then casts a Questing Beast, and +1s Lily again to make us all discard another card. Robert plays a Tundra for turn, flexing on all of us, then he draws a card with his Archivist. He then taps Wooburg to play the Prismatic Bridge and passes. Fog draws, then taps 3 Plains to cast Helluid Suncrowned. Foil draws, then taps 3 and pays 4 life to bestow Crick with a Herald of Torment. He then taps another Swamp and pays 4 more life to cast Grim Tutor to go look for a card and lose 3 more life. He then goes to combat and swings Crick at Lily, killing her and getting 7 life, going up to 30. Justin draws, then taps 5 to cast Karen Wanderer. He then swings Questing Beast at Robert for 4 and passes. Robert reveals cards off the top of his library for his bridge trigger, hitting a Goldspan Dragon, then draws for turn. He draws with the Archivist, plays the Birds of Paradise, and then taps his Elder Tree to cast his commander Garth One-Eye. After which he taps 4 and casts Spark Double, making a copy of Garth and passes. Fog draws, then taps 3 Plains to cast an Unquestioned Authority, drawing 2 cards and playing another Plains for turn. He then goes to combat and swings 5 commander at Robert. Foil loses a life at the beginning of his turn for his Herald. Then he draws and pays 4 life to cast Smallpox. We all lose a life, discard a card, sack a creature, and sack a land. He then casts Archfiend of Spite for its madness cost after discarding it. He then goes to combat and swings Cricket Me for 8 damage, and he gains 8 life. Justin plays a Command Beacon, then casts Satyr Wayfinder, looking at his top 4 and putting an island into his hand and the rest into his graveyard. He goes to combat and swings Questing Beast at foil for 4, who blocks with his Archfiend, making Justin lose 4 life. Robert does the bridge thing on his upkeep and hits a Dothy Voidwalker, then taps an Archivist to draw. He taps a Spark double copy to create a Black Lotus, then taps Garth to create a second Black Lotus. He casts Freed from the Reel on Garth, then untaps him, then uses him to create a Regrowth, tapping his Elder in order to cast the Illusionist Bracers he returned to his hand. He then attaches him to Garth. He then untaps Garth again in order to cast a Terror, targeting Anax and Cymede, and in response, I cast a Bullpen, switching the target to his Elder, killing it. He then brings in an untapped Breeding Pool, taking 2 and untapping Garth for a 3rd time before going to combat and swinging his Dragon to Justin for 4. Second main, Robert taps Garth to create a copy of Disenchant, and sacks his Lotus to cast it and copy it, destroying my Unquestioned Authority and foils Herald of Torment. Fall plays a Witch's Clinic as his land. He then goes to combat, giving Anax and Cymede lifelink and swinging it foil for 4. Foil draws, then pays 2 life and casts Foreboding Fruit, drawing 2 and losing 2. He plays a Swamp for turn, then pays 2 life to cast Doom Necromancer. He then goes to combat, swinging Cricket Robber for 7, and then gaining 7 life. Justin plays an island for turn, then taps enough to cast his commander with the Mimeoplasm, making him a copy of Doom Whisperer and giving him the counters of Archfiend of Spite. Robert draws for turn, then draws again with the Archivist, then forgets his bridge trigger, but taps 4 lands and casts Tezzeret the Schemer, and upticks him to create an Ethereum Cell. He then goes to combat and swings his Dragon at Fog for 4. Second main, he casts Ring of Valakut and sacks his Ethereum to equip the ring to his Dragon. Fog starts his turn by drawing, then taps 5 to cast Slash the Ranks, destroying all non-commander creatures, which is not ideal in this specific situation. In response, Robert sacks his Voidwalker to cast foils Foreboding Fruit from exile, drawing 2 and losing 2. Fog then goes to combat and swings his commander Robert for 5 more commander damage and then passes. At the end of Fog's turn, Justin pays 2 life to Zavale, putting both cards into the bin. Foil draws, then taps out and pays 2 more life to cast Demonic Rising. He then goes to combat, swinging his commander at Fog for 9. He then gains 9 life, going to 30, and passes, creating a 5/5 demon. Justin draws and casts Extract from Darkness, and brings back his Questing Beast. He then goes to combat, swinging his commander at Fog for 12. On Robert's upkeep, he remembers his bridge trigger this time and hits a Kinnereth and then draws for turn. He plays a Verdant Catacombs for turn, then pays the 1 to sack it, and gets an untapped Stomping Grounds, taking 2 more. He then taps 6 to cast Deadeye Navigator, soul bonding it to his commander, and passes. Fog just draws for turn and plays another Plains and passes. Foil draws, then taps 2 and pays 2 to cast a Phyrexian Rager, drawing 1 and losing 1. He then exiles Justin's graveyard with a Bazooka Bog, and goes to combat, swinging 5 in the air at Justin and his commander on the ground for 10 at Robert. At the end of Foil's turn, Justin pays 2 to Surveil, then pays 2 more to Surveil again, putting 1 on top and 1 in the yard. Justin draws, plays the land, then taps 5 to cast Herald of Secret Streams. He then swings his unblocked couple commander at Robert for 12, and in response, Robert casts Swords to Plowshares, targeting his commander. Justin then pays 2 to Surveil before gaining 12 life and going to 15. He then sacks his Command Beacon to put his commander back into his hand. Before Robert starts his turn, Foil pays 1 and 2 life to cast a Baleful Mastery, exiling the Deadeye Navigator. Robert hits a Tireless Provisioner off his bridge trigger, then draws for turn. He then activates Kindred's ability to bring back a card from his graveyard and makes Spark Double a copy of Garth. He then taps 1 to equip Spark Double with his ring and passes. Fog draws, then taps 3 to cast Pentarch Ward on his commander, naming Black. He then swings his commander Justin, who blocks with his Herald, but still takes 2 commander damage. Foil starts his turn by drawing and playing a Swamp. He then taps 4 and pays 6 life to cast Villa's Broker of Blood. He then pays 16 more life to give Questing Beast -4/-4, and then draws 16 cards. After which he goes to combat, swinging 5 in the air at Robert and 12 at Justin. But before damage, he casts a Doomblade on Kindred, which Robert responds to by tapping his Garth copy to create a Black Lotus that he then uses on Kindred's ability to gain 5 life from Kindred before taking 5. By casting Doomblade, it pump Foil's commander up by an extra 1, which is enough to take Justin out. On his upkeep, Robert does the bridge thing and hits a Ragavan, then draws for turn and passes. Fog starts his turn by drawing, looking at the board state, then plays a basic Plains. He then questions Robert about why he didn't use all of his Black Lotuses in order to save us from losing, and Robert makes some excuse about he needs to be flickered in order for Garth to do anything. So Fog taps 2 Plains, gives his commander lifelink, and swings him at foil since he's pro-black, gaining 5 life and dealing 5 damage and passing. Before the end of Fog's turn, Foil pays 4, putting the negative counters on his Rager, and draws 4 cards. Foil starts his turn by drawing, then goes to combat, swinging 18 at Robert. Once attacks are declared, Robert asks Foil how many of his creatures have flying so he can decide what he's going to do. Robert responds by tapping his Garth copy to get a copy of Regrowth targeting his swords in his yard, then casts it to exile the 5/5 flyer, then chump blocks his commander with his chimp. Second main, Foil casts Patriarch's Bidding, choosing Demon. Fog chooses Core, and Robert chooses Humans. We all get creatures back but don't trigger ETBs. He then goes to the end of his turn, discarding 11 cards, giving all of our creatures -11, -11, wiping the board. Robert gets Ominous Look of the Royal off his bridge, then draws for turn. He then taps 4 to cast a Shalai Voice of Plenty. And in response, Foil pays 1 to cast a File on Omniv. Robert then casts Chromatic Lantern and equips the ring to Shalai and passes. Fog just draws for turn and recasts his commander. Foil draws for turn, then sacks his Necromancer to bring back Overseer of the Damned, destroying Chalet. He then goes to combat, swinging at both of us with enough damage to win the game. The big winner of today was Foil with his mono black Crick deck. After what seems like forever, he was finally able to pull off a win on the channel. He's been trying to get this deck to work for the last couple weeks, and I'm glad it finally did. Congratulations, Foil. The MVP card of today's game was Patriarch's Bidding. Now, we haven't got a lot of these captured on camera, but Foil likes to pull off these living death kind of situations, and a lot of times it haven't worked out for him. But I gotta give it to him because today it worked out for him great. Thanks for watching, and be on the lookout for more games and decks you wouldn't normally see in your average meta.